I'm going to preface this right now. The game is not dying, and this is not the motif that we're going into this. I know people may see the thumbnail and they may see the title, but that's not what this video is going to be about. The game makes too much money somehow. And yeah, the game is not dying, at least anytime soon. Still, 7 years into the game, actually more than that, because the game came out in 2017 of February. We're in 2024 of April right now, at least at the time of this recording. Yeah, that's a pretty decent chunk. We're already in year 8 of FEH, but because we already have so many characters in the game, we have over 1,000 heroes, and some games are pretty much wrapped up in what they could do in their new heroes banner. I'm wondering what point we've entered to where we can feasibly think of the amount of new hero banners they could realistically sell at this point. It's not like IS isn't aware of this either, because now they're also doing a bunch of gimmick units. Before, we also had Arcanes and Ascended, which already took up a slot, but now we're getting to the point where they take up 2 or even sometimes 3 slots. You could easily look back at last year's Echoes banner where we got 3 gimmick units and 1 new actual hero on the banner, you know, excluding the instant emote and the GHB. The most new heroes we're just getting at this point is 3, barring Engage, of course, because it's still a relatively new game, but you know, that didn't really stop them from making 2 of the new heroes limited anyway. If anything, this is just mostly so they don't end up like Awakenings cast, where, you know, they basically don't have many new heroes to add unless they're in the form of a seasonal. Although I'd argue it's more than just because of the amount of spam they got early into the game. I would also argue it's because of the pacing in the later books, especially in book 6, where they launched book 6 with a brand new Awakening banner, but then they also gave us another Awakening banner in the same book. And this is already on top of the fact that a lot of the characters from Awakening were added at launch and through the span of the first 2 years. So getting 2 banners in one book like that isn't exactly great in padding out the amount of Awakening banners we got. And this is also on top of the amount of new Awakening characters that we got in said banners. We're at a point now where it's expected that pretty much 2 new heroes are on the banner, and then we get a GHB for the 3rd one. But they've been pretty consistent on adding a lot of new characters on the new heroes banners, especially from the recent ones we've gotten. Even going from the beginning of book 6, we had Flavia, Basilio, Muriel as a freebie, or I think she was an instant emo. I assume she was a freebie. We had Yenfei as a GHB, and we had Priam. Same book, we also then got Gregor, Fila, Rickon, Cervantes, you know, another Robin. That's a lot of Awakening characters they could have easily padded. And this is also on top of the fact that we launched with another Awakening banner in book 8 with Severa, Inigo, Lucina, Lawrence, and Valadar. So that's another 5 there. I think they could have easily padded it out for another 3 years if they really wanted to be a bit more stingy like they do with a lot of the other banners nowadays. But I mean, it's too late for that, I guess. And really the only other one is just that they rarely get any breaks. I think barring book 5, because that year we only got Atharja, Inigo, and Severa all with maybe I think a couple other ones. And in book 7, we still got a lot of Awakening, but it was less on the front of them being new heroes. Although I'd argue that it was just making up for the fact that we had 2 in book 6. And wait, what was the whole point of this? Oh yeah, they're bad at padding. Although I don't think I necessarily blame them all too much, you know, at least nowadays. Before I could definitely, but having to cycle through several games every single year for, you know, at least 1 book isn't exactly the easiest thing, especially if you have to skip out on certain games. We get 12 new hero banners each year, you know, excluding seasonals and legendary and mythic and emblems for all of that. 2 of which are already going to be taken up. One by Fallen, which is basically a seasonal. I don't think people are ready for that conversation though. And the other one being Brave Heroes in August. So essentially they have to cycle through 10 games every single year. Sometimes they may do 9 and then use 1 game twice in 1 year. It's not really going to be uncommon, nor has it ever not been the case, I believe. I think the only time that was ever the case was maybe around book 5, but even then, I couldn't tell you because I don't really remember all the banners. That being said, some games just also have to bear with not having any new hero banners because they only have 10 to cycle through each time, which if anything is probably for the best because some games would more desirably want to be padded out than others. But even if we were to go with the idea of them padding out banners from now on, assuming that it is also on a 3 new hero basis where we get, you know, 3 guaranteed new heroes that were never in the game, they could realistically pad out a lot of banners. And it's a thankless job to go through every single one of these graphics and putting red squares and blue squares and yellow squares I am the most normal Fire Emblem Heroes fan. Anyway, assuming that they do 3 guaranteed new heroes per banner, and if we were to go through every single game, and again, this is also just assuming that they were to go through every single game, because I have TMS on this list, and I mean, I think we've all accepted at this point TMS is not getting another banner. But even then, if you were to go through every single one of these titles, some of them are combined. I'll leave a link in the description as well. It's also on the screen if you want to just type it out there, but that's not as fun. We'd have a lot of banners left to go through. Unsurprisingly, a lot of them from Tellius. And if I were to give you a rundown of the 3 games that have the most heroes they could easily put on a new heroes banner, it's Tellius at the top with 19, Genealogy with 16, and 3 Houses with 13. And the 3 Houses one may seem surprising given how much content they usually get, but that cast is huge. That on top of the fact that a lot of the time, they've been padding them out through seasonals. So they actually have a lot more to go through than arguably most other games on this list, which is really, really funny in retrospect. Even more than Engage if you really want to put it into perspective, with only 11 banners. To be fair, the cast isn't nearly as big, but even so, the fact that 3 Houses has been going on for this long and they still have some of the most amount of new hero banners left over is pretty surprising. Even then, you still have plenty from Arcanea, Echoes if you really, really wanted to pad it, Thracia for obvious reasons, Binding and Blazing still have a few. Sacred Stones is definitely near the bottom alongside, you know, Heroes and Awakening, Fates, Engage, TMS, yada yada yada. Awakening is in that weird position where I think they could end up doing 2 more banners, but you know how it's gonna go. It's gonna be like Attuned Crom with like Vake and Exilus GHB or something, or 2 OCs or like 3 OCs and like a bunch of new gimmicks and blah blah blah. I'm gonna be real, I don't think we're getting base Nor. You could quote me if I'm wrong, and I'm probably gonna be wrong, but that's okay anyway. If you were to do a collective amount based on these arbitrary rules that I have decided to work with, we'd have 123 banners left. And assuming that we had to only get 10 banners each year, and they were to go through every single character and guarantee add 3 new characters, we'd have more than 12 years worth of banners. And this is also excluding newer titles that get added to the mix. They're going to be good for a long while. Could even be more if they continue to decrease the amount of new heroes we get in favor of alts or gimmick units, because we generally get gimmick units every single year, and it's been happening ever since we've gotten Ascended. We got Rearms, and now we have Attuned, and we have Emblems, and we have units that make me want to kill mine. They're just going to keep adding more and more. So eventually it could just end up being a whole banner of alts and, you know, new heroes, but I'm getting a bit of ahead of myself there. This is more of a slight tangent, but they could also go down the route of reviving Farfetch'd banners again, because they only did it for 2 years, and to be honest, with the amount of characters that are left over in some of these titles, they could easily put out new banners like this by mixing around the characters. I totally think it's on the table, but again, who's to say they'll do it in favor of just padding it out with alts and gimmicks anyway. But this is all on the idea that we do need new heroes in the game. And this may sound really dumb, but maybe we don't need new heroes for it to be a banner. Maybe just alts and original characters that get whatever amount of treatment they do. Because we're getting to the point where that's essentially the case anyway. You could look back at the last Echoes banner we did get. We had 2 OC fairies, we had a Sonya alt, and then we had Mycin. And then Marla and Hestia and whatever the case might be. We're getting to that point anyway, where I would also just consider new hero banners as seasonal as they can possibly get. The only difference being is that they continue to pad the demo pool, so, I mean, yay, I guess. And they're only going to keep introducing gimmick units anyway, you know, in part due to padding. You could easily just look back at the beginning of the year where we got the addition of emblems, which first of all is just another way of printing lords and main characters for them to sell. But second, they're running out of legendary, so it only makes sense that they pad it in some capacity. And if anything, I find that it's going to be an inevitability, assuming that the game remains successful enough. And given that we're over 7 years into FEH, and they're still making this much money anyway, I doubt it's going away for a good while. Even if it lost more people, I'm sure the game would still be relatively successful in its own right. The other thing they could easily do, and this is one I would much prefer, remove one of the games from the cycle and add another type of gimmick banner again. Because we already have Fallen, and we already have Brave. I think they could pull another Adrift. And I don't necessarily mean Adrift itself, because, I mean, I think they shot themselves in the foot with that one. Year 2 Awakening Fate spam with another Camilla and, you know, 2 more Corins. and another Azura. That wasn't exactly the best timing, but the idea was there. It was just really poorly executed. Although a lot of it just might end up being chalked up to more Lord spam again. And maybe, just maybe, they just don't do anything. They have a lot of units despite many of them being without demand, which is part of the reason why we get alts for Lords or like really popular characters anyway, just so they could sell the banner and make money and do whatever. And I don't think it's going to get to a point where FEH is proudly presenting the least desired options because nobody's going to pull for them. I just don't see the day where FEH is like, FEH, wait, is that... What the fuck? I mean, sorry. What the fake? It's Hicks, guys. Look, everyone's favorite Thracia character. Oh my faking god. Oh, I can't. This voice is so bad. In conclusion, they can most likely keep padding forever and ever. And even in the scenario where they completely run out of new heroes, which... they won't. They could just fully embrace being seasonals, which in some aspects, they already are. You know, I did actually vote for Hicks in CYO, but, you know, he won't get in. FEH, keep gambling, FEH.